Kupanda. This means the climb in Swahili, the language of the Tanzanian people. Literally and figuratively, sometimes people climb mountains because they can, and sometimes because they have to. Whether you get there or not, you need to remain courageous. This is the true story of 12 men and women who committed to a challenge much greater than themselves. The challenge? To raise awareness and much-needed funds for Special Olympics athletes by conquering the tallest mountain in Africa. Their goal may have been to raise a lot of money for Special Olympics Connecticut and check a few things off their bucket list, but what they weren't expecting was the lifelong impact that conquering Kilimanjaro would have on them. It all started over 20 years ago when 8-year-old Max started taking swim lessons from Dave at his local pool. Max is now an accomplished multi-sport athlete who has won gold and competed at the highest levels of Special Olympics at both national and world games, representing Team Connecticut. Max has always been a relentless fundraiser for Special Olympics and would always ask his favorite swim coach for a donation. A broke college student, Dave was never able to do much, but always vowed to support Max in any way he could. Fast forward to September of 2018, when Dave, now a 7-year veteran with the Cheshire Police Department and a school resource officer in Cheshire, Connecticut, decided now was the time to support Max and his fellow athletes. Dave's idea? To climb Mount Kilimanjaro and do it to support Special Olympics Connecticut. He had at least one other officer on board that wanted to climb with him, but wanted to open it up to see if anyone else was up to the challenge. A few months later, Dave presented to a room full of dedicated LETR fundraisers and volunteers. A few weeks later, a small group of people met to ask some questions, map out a timeline, and discuss the $10,000 individual fundraising commitment. Within a few months, a final roster of 12 people had agreed to do something that had never been done before: summit Mount Kilimanjaro and raise a total of over $120,000 in support of Special Olympics Connecticut. In the midst of extensive training, doctor's appointments to get medical clearance, and rounding out their personal inventory of necessary equipment, the fundraising began. These officers hosted countless community events, reached out to friends and family, requested grants, and sold sponsorships to match key checkpoints along their route to the summit of Kilimanjaro. When all was said and done, over $160,000 had been raised to support Special Olympics Connecticut. Mount Kilimanjaro is the highest mountain in Africa and the highest single freestanding mountain above sea level in the world. The trek itself took 8 days and covered nearly 50 miles through 4 distinct climate zones. A skilled team of guides was with them every step of the way, monitoring their vitals, keeping everyone hydrated, healthy, and on schedule. At night, they slept in huts, rested, and were up early again to continue the journey. Some days they hiked for 12+ hours, while others were shorter and covered significantly less distance as they acclimated to the elevation. Altitude sickness is a serious concern on Mount Kilimanjaro. Well over 50,000 people attempt to summit Mount Kilimanjaro annually with a success rate of roughly 65%. In the early morning hours of February 23, 2020, Officer Dave Malyar, Chief Josh Berniger, Lieutenant Tim Bernier, Lieutenant Mike Durkee, Lieutenant Tim Galavas, Lieutenant Dave Hartman, Lieutenant Rob Kluk, Detective Donna Brown, Detective Tom McGarvey, Sergeant Ralph Fiasco Jr., Sergeant Mandy Gray, and Lori Harder all stood at Uhuru Peak, standing at 19,340 feet, and raised the LETR flag in honor of Special Olympics athletes. The entire team of 12 successfully summited Mount Kilimanjaro. Life is a journey. Enjoy the trip. Aim for the sky, but move slowly, enjoying every step along the way. It is all those little steps that make the journey complete. The journey is the reward. You can learn more about conquering Kilimanjaro and the athletes who inspired the journey, including Max, in Officer Dave Malyar's book, Kupanda, which is currently available on Amazon.